Hi there everyone, welcome to the Ukulele channel. Today I wanted to show you the improvements I've made to this instrument that I reviewed recently. This is the Tom Concert Carbon Fiber Ukulele. It's actually polycarbonate with some carbon fiber in it, but it's being called the carbon fiber, which is fine, but it isn't actual carbon fiber 100% like the Close series of instruments. Now, there were some problems with this instrument, and I have addressed the ones that I can address. The things that I can't address are the string spacing because the nut is built in, but the things that I did address were the action to a point. I put on side position markers. I put on another strap button, and then the final thing I did was I glued in the ring. And don't worry about that, that's just dust from the work that I've been doing around. So the silver ring is now glued on where it was popping off in the original video. So let me talk about how I did each of these. For the extra strap button, as a polycarbonate, you have to be a little careful here. I've had friends who have accidentally drilled into these and cracked them. So with that in mind, what I do with this is I drill a small pin vise. So I bought a pin vise, I think it was from Amazon or something like that, that comes with a number of bits. I drill a very small, this is actually the final drill bit. So I drill a small hole, then I drill a second hole, and then finally I drill the third hole because I want to go slow and smooth in order to avoid cracking. Then I take a strap button and a screw, and what I do is two things. I put super glue on the screw itself, or CA glue depending where you are in the world, and then I also put some on the button itself. And then when I screw it in, I have to do it very quickly and steadily and get it all the way in so it's secure. But now I have a strap button there. It's a perfect spot for it. It's one that could ship with it. As for gluing in the rosette here, just some drops of super glue on the other side and then carefully putting it in without touching the sound hole. That's the biggest danger. I suppose you could put on the sound hole first and then drag it over too. It'd be easier to do without strings on, but I did it. Now, as for the action, I messed around a little bit, and I don't have my traditional string action ruler, the metal one that you can buy. I have this tool that I've reviewed in the past from Guitar Works, I believe. It's actually a modified digital caliper, but what it allows you to do is to put this sensor on the strings, and then you can see what the action is. The action here originally was pretty high, and now if I measure at the first fret, I'll just do the G string for the moment, zero it out. And I always measure in millimeters because it just seems to me like that's more finite or more finesse than inches. I mean, you could do inches if you want, but it just seems to me to be more logical to do millimeters. It's now 0.49 millimeters at the first fret, and it used to be, I believe, 0.9. Well, how did I do that? Well, another thing that I bought off of Amazon, a set of 3 of these nut files. Now, there are really good nut files. These are not great nut files, but the very, very good nut files cost a lot. You can get those from Music Nomad, or you can get them from StewMac. I just bought the cheap ones, and most of the time I'm just trying to use the 0.010 edge and trying to remember which one that is. And then I just very carefully file down. Now, you might say, how do you not go too far? Well, at one point, I bought some like pipe cleaning brushes that are called the Guitar Setup Kit. It's not really. A nut file is kind of what you need, but you get these little gauges. What I do is I get the strings out of the way, I loosen up the strings, I tape them off to the side, and then I can lay these down and find out how high the nut slots currently are, and then I can back off. Now, what I found is that I have the thicker ones only. It comes with a set of like 50. I don't need all those. So generally I use the taller ones and stack a couple up until it seems good. Look at what their measurements are, then I go just a little bit lower than that. And then I make sure that I'm cutting straight across, up and down, sliding up and down like sawing a log. And then when they're all cut down, then I measure and see if it needs to go down any further. It usually doesn't take too much before you've really made progress. Now, this is something that the company should have had figured out before it gets sent to a customer. These other things are totally conditional, but this is kind of an important one. Action is important. So we've talked about the sound hole, we've talked about the strap button, we've talked about the action. Now let me talk about this, which is my latest project, which is trying to figure out how to put side position markers on an ukulele that doesn't have them. So I watched some videos, and what they do is they drill the hole very carefully, and then they have the material that you can buy for side position markers. They put glue in the hole, super glue in the hole, put the position marker in, and then cut it off. So that's kind of what I'm doing, except again, because I'm working with a very fragile, potentially material. Strong material, but also cracks easily, if that makes sense. But what I do is I drill a very small hole. So again, in my pin vise kit here, I actually use the second one, which has a measurement of 1.0. I think that's millimeters. Yep, size in millimeters. Then I go up to 1.5. And then 2.0 is the size of the material that I bought, I think, off of eBay. So got a whole bunch. This will do 100 ukuleles, what I found out, because I've already put side position markers on about 10 other of my instruments since I've sort of figured this out. I've always been afraid to do it. I'm not a luthier, not afraid to do things. But again, I'm not a luthier. I know I'm not a luthier, but I figured, you know what, I can do this. So what I do a little differently is I put the super glue on the end of the fret material after the hole is the right size. I push it until it stops, and you feel it stop, and you feel it hold immediately. So you might get a little bit of super glue on the side or whatever. And then I use a fret clipper to cut off the end. That does not make it smooth. And with this one in particular, this was the first one I tried, I was like, what can I do? Well, what I realized is that you can use a razor blade. And then after you've got it cut off, you can very carefully shave until everything is smooth. And I just got it even smoother there than what it was before. And it's just little bits at a time. Now, do you want to do this on a super expensive ukulele? I don't think so. But something up to maybe $200 if it doesn't have side position markers, first of all, it should. But second, if not, you could do this and then you're totally fine. You've got side position markers on the side of the instrument, which help you play, and it's a much better instrument. So, bunch of things solved here. Again, second strap button, the rosette glued into place, not going to pop out anymore, action adjusted, and side position markers added. All that together, this instrument came this way. That would probably be a 4.5 maybe out of 5. The one thing that needs to get fixed, I think, is the size of the nut, and not necessarily the size of the nut. The size of the nut is good. I believe this one is 36 millimeters, but it's really narrow string spacing up there. If you can see between G and A, it's really tight up there. If that was spread out in the design, that'd be better, and of course set up properly when you get it. But that's what I've done to the tom, and this thing is now as playable as it's going to be. It needs to be tuned up again. And remember, you tape up the strings. What I do is I loosen them up, and then what I found is that if you make them loose enough, you don't have to do anything down here to mess with it. Turns out, by the way, that this is a string through bridge. You can actually see the strings go all the way through. They tie a bead on the other side and pull it through. So they're not going to come off if you don't lose it up here. And then you loosen them, you pull the strings off. I put tape actually on the strings and pull them back so they're out of the way. And then I can do any work on the fretboard or on the nut that I need to, and you're good to go. So that's my quick look at improving the Tom concert carbon fiber ukulele. Yeah, you can do some of these things too. Just go slow. Remember that material like this can crack. Wood, if you don't leave enough space, could actually chip into the fretboard. That could be potentially problematic. So you got to make sure that you're planning for the full width of the material and you're going slow and giving it enough space. But you could do it too. All right, thanks so much for joining for this video. I hope you're having a great day, and I'll be back soon with some more uke stuff for you.